fellow Americans.
Let's talk about the situation at the border. We've seen a huge surge in migrants crossing the border since January. The number of children in custody higher than it was than its 2019 peak during the Trump administration. Your colleague Veronica Escobar of Texas called the conditions there unacceptable. She was there on Friday. Is she right? What more must be done?
Actually, the facts are these. There are more children, about 600-700 more children, unaccompanied children, coming over the border. This is a humanitarian challenge to all of us. What the administration has inherited is a broken system at the border, and they are working to correct that in the children's interest. I'm so pleased that the president, as a temporary measure, has sent FEMA to the border in order to help facilitate the children going from one 72-hour issue into where they are cared for as they are transferred into family homes or homes that are safe for them to be.
And I have to confess, I knew nothing about their suffering until 2021 when I volunteered to help the Biden administration with the crisis at the southern border. As part of Operation Artemis, I was deployed to the Pomona Fairplex Emergency Intake Site in California to help HHS, Office of Refugee Resettlement, reunite children with sponsors in the United States. I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. This is why we are witnessing an explosion of labor trafficking. Now, whether it's intentional or not, it could be argued that the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation that is run by bad actors seeking to profit off of the lives of children.
Russia said once they take Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries. That puts America at war. This is about preventing war. It's always been about preventing war. My husband is a combat veteran. He's deployed now. The last thing I want him or any of his military brothers and sisters to do is to go to war.
But I think it is time to give the Ukrainians more help hitting these bases inside Russia.
One of the reasons that the administration has hesitated is because they believe it will escalate things even further with Russia pull the U.S. further in. Why not? Why do you think that's a good idea?
Because it's Russia that has escalated this war. Russia has learned how to pull its forces back out of the range where we have allowed Ukraine to use our weapons and get our support.
American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III.
Ron Wyden was confronting the most senior spy in the United States, General James Clapper, who was then the director of national intelligence, right? There's no guy higher than him. The buck stops with him when it comes to intelligence. He's testifying under oath in front of Congress, right? But more broadly, in front of the public. This is televised. And Ron Wyden asked him a very specific question about a program, mind you, that Ron Wyden knows exists because he has security clearance. He sits on the Intelligence Committee. And he knows there's domestic mass surveillance, and this is how it goes. This is how the top spy responds under oath.
So what I wanted to see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
So that was a lie. Wyden knew it was a lie. Clapper knew it was a lie. He actually admitted it was a lie after I came forward, 3 months later. Here I am, sitting at the NSA, next to my buddies who I've talked to about these programs. I've gone, look at this, and they're laughing at it. I'm laughing at it, and it's not that we go, oh, ha ha ha, he's getting away with it. It's like, what are you going to do? These guys are, they're bullshitters. The system is built on lies.
That was British police came into the embassy and arrested.
After a long flight from the UK, Julian Assange's day began on the island of Saipan, a tiny territory chosen because it's the closest US court to Australia. This normally quiet courthouse, swarming with reporters, as the WikiLeaks founder arrived flanked by former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd.
Used an AR-15 in order to act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
There are a number of weapons out there with a number of ranges. Again, an advance was completed. The determination of the perimeter, I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some of it has to do with terrain, some of it has to do with buildings, some of it has to do with assets and resources that are available.
What I'm hearing is that a perimeter was not established outdoors in an outdoor venue that would prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able to be within the range of Secret Service protection.
Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
So what is the threat to democracy? People on both sides, people in power, saying out loud that they want to control what you get to hear and see. It is real, it is a threat, and it is happening and growing. And I'll tell you what, punishing thought is on the agenda. And I just heard it from someone who's not a kook, not Alex Jones, not Tucker Carlson, one of the most sober and intelligent politicians of our time, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
I think it's important to indict the Russians, just as Mueller indicted a lot of Russians who were engaged in direct election interference and boosting Trump back in 2016. But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrence.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the Biden administration repeatedly pressured Meta to censor content, including information about Hunter Biden, and Zuck admitted that he also regrets complying with these demands. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Representative Jim Jordan, Zuck writes, quote, "The FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting on Joe Biden's family, we sent that story to fact checkers for review and temporarily demoted it."
You know, you do some tweets that seem to be, or at least give support to some who would call others conspiracy theories.
Well, yes, but I mean, honestly, you know, some of these conspiracy theories have turned out to be true.
Which ones?
Well, like the Hunter Biden laptop.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am in awe of Ms. Jankowicz. When the department picked her, did it know that she had said that Mr. Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation? Did it know that she had vouched for the veracity of the Steele dossier?
Senator, let me repeat myself and add an additional fact. One, we do not discuss internal hiring processes.
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech.
To be a conspiracy theorist is to have been right all along, despite the efforts of the paid-for liars. And it's also to be demonstrably well ahead of the gullible, still believing in smoke and mirrors. Conspiracy theorist was first used by the CIA to shut down those who doubted the official line about the murder of John F. Kennedy, that fishy old tale about a lone shooter and a magic bullet, and then that lone shooter being shot by another lone shooter before he could talk. That was in the 1960s, and from then, the label conspiracy theorist worked for decades as the means to make thinking people too scared to speak when they smelt a rat. Let 2024 be the year of clearing out the rubbish, the trash, the long overdue year when the past their sell-by date labels, conspiracy theorist among them, are cast into the dustbin of history.
Wake up, everybody. Welcome to the rebellion. Welcome into Redacted on this Monday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
8 days until Election Day, and the deep state could be ready to institute martial law. We're going to talk about that on today's show. All of the pieces coming into play. So if Trump wins in a landslide victory, well, what exactly does that look for January 20th by Inauguration Day? A number of deep state whistleblowers have come forward and said, we are going to see martial law in the United States, and they will not let Trump become president of the U.S.
This is wild, you guys. You think you're going to have a peaceful holiday post-election? You can put that, you can put that aside. All right. Also, voter fraud. Does it happen? Of course it does. It would be absolutely impossible for it not to happen, but not in the way that the media is telling us. In fact, we're going to have a Justice Department lawyer who litigated voter fraud to tell us what the media is telling us, why they're telling us, what is actually going on. Yes, illegals are registered to vote. That is true. So we're going to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
And also over the weekend, Israel admitting, the Ministry of Defense, the head of the Israel's defense forces, coming out and saying that, you know what, they don't have a compass for their war. And basically, they're admitting we don't know exactly what we're going to do here in the future. We don't have a compass to win this war. At the same time, we're actually now learning who is the deep state swamp rat in the United States, the guy who betrayed the United States of America, who is actually behind these concentration camps that the CIA is planning to build inside of Gaza. Yes, a deep state U.S. swamp rat. How many of you guys can guess who it is? We're going to talk about that on today's show. But first, we've been saying on this show now for more than a year that Trump will likely win in a landslide, but that the deep state will never allow him to be inaugurated as president of the United States on January 20th. The CIA will not allow it. The very same group of people, of course, who doesn't want him to become president because he's going to defund them largely and put them out of business. And now we're hearing from the deep state that the deep state is preparing for martial law in the United States in order to prevent Trump from becoming president. You know, he'll win the election, clearly, by a landslide. It's seemingly was what's about to happen. But January 20th rolls around. This is how you can keep Congress from getting him into the presidency. They're already setting ballot boxes on fire in Oregon, Washington State, in the swing districts where Trump is polling very, very strong. Overnight, Clark County, Washington, had another ballot box set on fire. This in addition to the ones in Vancouver, Washington, and in Oregon. This is the United States of America. You look at this, you'd be like, oh, that's probably happening in some third world country right now. No, that's the United States of America, setting ballot boxes on fire in areas, in swing areas where Trump is polling really well and doing really well. This is the tolerance, right? This is the tolerance we talk about. Hundreds of ballots up in flames. These areas that were hit in blue states are currently polling very well for Trump. They are swing counties.
This is why Clayton and I today were like, we have our ballots. We're like, are we going to mail these? Or are we going to go in?
No, we're going in physically.
Yeah, because
and we want to receipt.
I don't trust it. Yeah.
I know.
Let us know what your plan is. If you've already mailed it, how do you feel about that? Because, well, two things. One, I want a sticker to wear around all day. Right. And then also, I just don't trust it putting that ballot in the mail anymore. Let me know how you feel about that.
So one way or another, they're trying to stop him right now. Either it's burning the ballots or something else. This is why we just said, we're going on Election Day to the polling location, voting in person. I mean, you guys do you. I mean, it's up to you. And I'm certainly they're pushing it over. I think the numbers overnight are about 45 million Americans have already voted. 45 million Americans have already voted. And they thought their ballots would be safe. Mm-hmm. They drop them in these ballot boxes. They're like, I'm doing my good for the country. Until you see the local news and you're like, wait a second, that's the exact ballot box that I dropped mine off in.
Right.
And they're all up in flames now.
Yeah.
Chad MC says, I'm voting in person. Yeah, let us know in the comments what you guys are planning to doing. Meanwhile, deep state whistleblower, former State Department cyber expert Mike Benz is warning that they will not let Trump move back into the Oval Office, even if he wins in a landslide. Watch.
So is your sense that on, say, January 20th, if Trump does win clearly in the election, is your sense that on January 20th, Trump will be inaugurated or no?
This period between November 5th and January 6th is going to be extremely intense. If Trump wins, my sense is that you will see street paramilitary, left-wing / never Trump, right even potentially. You're going to see this sort of summer 2020 style riot force start to break out on the streets. The media is going to portray them as pro-democracy groups who are protesting the illegitimacy of the Trump Electoral College victory. So that's going to shut down the country. It's going to start terrorizing people. It's going to start preventing people from being able to communicate. You're going to see pressure put on the social media companies, extreme pressure put on by the Justice Department, put on by the advertiser networks. You're going to see this crisis response. It's going to feel like this country is, it's going to feel like the day after January 6th for 2 months if Trump does indeed win the Electoral College, in order for them to prime the pump for their extraordinary actions on January 6th.
Oh, hell.
I mean, Mike Benz, further elucidating this point, says those astroturfed, race-based street protests will be framed as organic. Wow, they just came out of nowhere. They'll be spontaneous pro-democracy demonstrations, just as for all of our CIA-backed rent-a-riots are abroad. The media will inflate this frame, and it will give cover for Congress to block Trump's win on January 6th, 2025, and then not be able to take office in late January at the inauguration. Kyle Seraphin, friend of the show Kyle Seraphin, former FBI whistleblower, also saying this today. He said, how interesting about Mike Benz sees the same potential that me and the Suspendables have been talking about in our group chat. Y'all ready for the next couple of months? Now, Kyle's referring to Garrett O'Boyle, these other FBI whistleblowers who came out and had their lives ruined after they blew the whistle on how corrupt the FBI is. Garrett O'Boyle specifically, had his life, upended because he told the truth about what the FBI was doing, weaponizing of the DOJ and going after conservatives, going after Catholics and prayer meetings and so forth. So they've already been talking about it. They know what's coming. And now you have confirmation from Mike Benz saying this is exactly what they're planning. And so you can start to see this, right? You can start to see the organic street protests. People are taking to the streets. They're upset that Trump won. They're upset. There's going to be like anti-race. There's going to be these these organic, race-based street protests.
Yeah,
it's terrifying, and you know exactly the game plan. So just be aware of the game plan. This is what they're going to do.
All right. Well, we've been reporting here for months that U.S. Special Forces, including active duty military members and non-active duty, are fighting in Ukraine. Has Congress declared war? No. Absolutely not. So then why are there reports overnight of U.S. Army Rangers fighting and dying after crossing the border into Russia and trying to attack Russian targets? It ended exactly how you think it ended, because we are not equipped to win a war there. Neither is Ukraine. We should have had peace talks 2 years ago. Alas, here we are with thousands dead, and now American soldiers dead as well. The FSB, which is the security service of Russia, just published photos of a dead Army Ranger from the 75th Ranger Regiment. We can't show you the full body, but this is the Ranger tattoo on one of the Rangers' bodies. How did they get that? How many Americans are being killed fighting in Russia for Ukraine? We don't know, because they won't tell us. And in fact, according to RT, the FSB also showed the weapons and ammunition of these 4 fighters that were killed, American weapons, even a Canadian flag. So again, why are Americans and Canadians fighting Russians? Former CIA agent Michael Shower told us just a few weeks ago that it's well known that Americans are fighting and dying in Ukraine, but they're keeping it hidden from us. Watch.
If NATO forces are operating on the ground in Ukraine, unless we're there to pay them and change their diapers, there's going to be American soldiers on the ground. And we've heard since the beginning of the war of various conclaves of large numbers of NATO officers meeting in Kiev, supposedly in secure bunkers underground. And yet we know the Russians have claimed that they've hit 2 or 3 or 4 of them. And we never get even the notice in the Western press that something was hit, let alone was anybody killed.
Okay.
Right.
Remember when Lloyd Austin said he was going to be more transparent with us about civilian deaths and where American soldiers are dying and that kind of stuff? That was in about 2022, 2023. That was funny, right?
Right.
So
well,
funny.
I mean, we know that mercenaries certainly are. Of course, we've known from the very beginning of this war that mercenaries are there from France, from the United States. We've been covering that extensively. But we also have talked about the CIA stations and, of course, the special forces that have been there and NATO forces that are there. But, of course, we won't hear any of it. And Michael Scheuer's big thing is, what are you telling the parents? Like, are the parents of these fallen soldiers? And see, Mandy right here in our chat, Mandy says, not just mercenaries. My friend's son was killed, and he was U.S. Army. So, again, not
active duty.
Active duty, not just mercenaries. You know, guys that retired a few years ago and still want to go involved and go shoot some Russians, right? No. We've seen those people. No. Active duty. So what are these NATO, what are they telling these parents? And are these families having to sign non-disclosure agreements in order to get the pension and benefits of their fallen son?
For
Can you
a
imagine?
war that not only did we not authorize, but Congress has not declared.
Like knock on your door.
We're supposed to be at peace. Does it feel like peace right now?
No, but like knock on your door. Hi, we're with the U.S. Army. Your son was just killed fighting. We can't tell you exactly where. We want you to sign this non-disclosure agreement so that you'll receive his death benefits. We're not going to tell you where he died, though. Wink, wink. We know where he died, but we're not going to tell you. So that's exactly what's going on here, and it's deeply, deeply troubling. Let's go to Canada now. This is deeply troubling. Overnight, who didn't see this coming, by the way? The group that worked to legalize assisted dying in Canada, the MAID program, now admits that the program has been abused. Really? That's shocking. Now, Canada leads the world right now on assisted suicides. And the United States is trying to really catch up to them right now under the Biden administration. So right now, doctors have been coercing people into dying, according to this new report. Coercing them. Wasn't even on the table, but they're encouraging them to do so. Medical assistance in dying has been legal in Canada since 2017 under the MAID program. And in 2021, the program was expanded to allow people with disabilities to use it. And in 2027, it's expected to expand again to allow minors and people with mental health conditions to use it as well. I mean, Malthusian much? This is deeply disgusting. The Telegraph reported this. Assisted dying abused in Canada admits the group that helped legalize it. It comes as data revealed by the Telegraph last week showed that those on lower incomes who were offered the scheme were more likely to opt for it.
That's crazy in and of itself.
Yes.
Oh, you're so poor.
That's eugenics.
Yeah.
That's
your life
eugenics.
sucks
That's
'cause
exactly
you're
what
poor.
they did.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. No, elaborate on that, Philip, please.
Well, that was the eugenics. Part of the eugenics was certain people were just better than others, and it was like your station in life was because of biological factors. And so it was basically what they would do is they would sterilize women that were poor or that they deemed morally irrehensible. So it's like this is just another way of doing eugenics. It's like, well, how do we get rid of the poor? Let's just encourage them to legally kill themselves. That's what that's insanity.
Yes.
So not only are they abusing MAID up there in Canada, they're also trying to hide how they're using it. And so, for instance, they had one call here. In one instance, they spoke of a patient who had been approved for assisted dying on the grounds of suffering from hearing loss.
Just off yourself.
Hearing loss.
Life's
on the
not worth
same
it.
phone call, it was claimed some medical colleges in Canada had been advising against referring to MAID on patients' long-form death certificates in a move which could distort the true numbers of people using it, basically hiding it. Hiding it, right? We're going to hide the MAID numbers. Yes, eugenics. Remember that they are trying to get mental health experts to advise the government on how to ethically expand it now to minors, children, who can take advantage of the medical assistance in dying program in Canada. I mean, this is exactly what the liberal, tolerant left wants. This is absolutely disgusting. This is Trudeau's Canada right now. And no doctor has signed off on it so far. No doctor has put their signature on this, thank God, but they still want to try it under the Trudeau government.
I mean, you got to think they're going to find a mark to be able to do it, to sign off. So, we've showed you the reports that they continue to submit to Parliament. And these doctors are like, we can't really find any kind of loophole that says that mental health or that young people would be better off dead. And we can't sign off on that. And the government's like, just keep looking. Just keep trying to write this down in a way that we can sell to the Canadian people because we want it. They want it.
Shirley Scott in our chat says she's an Ontarian, and she says, I can't believe Trudeau is still our prime minister.
I know, me neither.
Right,
I have a hearing loss, so I have a hearing loss in my right ear, so I guess
you'd be available.
Yeah.
If you go to Canada, they'd probably talk to you about it. Be like, David, I know your life, you're happy. You've got a nice dog. You've got a great family. Everything's great. You work on a great show called Redacted, #1 show in the world. But I know you got a little bit of hearing loss. You may want to consider suicide.
Yeah.
So just putting it out there for you.
How do you live with yourself?
Just give it some thought. All right.
That's ridiculous.
Yes. Okay. If you are a Microsoft Windows user, you may have noticed that Microsoft Word is getting rid of highly offensive words like mother and father. That's right. Microsoft's inclusivity checker will help you to make your documents as woke as possible. So you can turn on these filters. If you do that, they may nudge you to swap out certain words that they think are more inclusive. So you can just check it like, hey, do you want me to prevent you from using gender bias or ethnic slurs? Because you might not know this yourself, but thankfully the computer does. So instead of mother or father, they may say parental leave or birth-related leave. We can't use maternity leave anymore, of course. Microsoft said it also wants to make language more gender neutral. Like if you type in the word manpower, they'll say, well, maybe you want to use workforce because that's gender neutral. Reclaim the Net points out this also. A modern update takes a dim view of the expression maternity leave on gender inclusivity grounds, suggests that it be replaced with birth-related leave or parental leave or childbirth leave. Fathers who go on paternity leave should instead be described as taking child bonding leave, Microsoft thinks. All this explained as a way to make sure that the writer is inclusive of all genders. So, you might be too dumb to know this for yourself or too ignorant. So you might describe things that are family related that are in your world. But thankfully, Microsoft will, change that for you. So think about it when you turn on those types of filters if you want it, because you just don't know any better. Google Docs has already done similar things. So with using property owner over landlord, they don't use the word master bedroom anymore. I forget what they call it. It's not the master bedroom.
Largest bedroom. You can't say master. You can't say master bedroom anymore.
I don't remember what that's called. Anyway, it's just a more subtle way to push a certain world view for the rest of us who are just too dumb to know better and using language we were taught.
Well, Madison Square Garden holds about 20,000 people, standing room only, and it was sold out last night for President Trump's massive rally. More than 40,000 lined the streets outside, watched the speech on a giant television who couldn't get in. So you had 20,000 inside, you had 40,000 outside. By the way, I don't know if you saw it, in London, they had thousands of people at a rally outdoors watching the event in London, England. Like, what the hell? Okay. That's how big this thing was. New polls show that New York is in play for President Trump. And by the way, I know like CNN will spin it a certain way, but their own internal polling at the Trump team shows that New York, blue states, even New Jersey, possibly could go blue. Could go red for Trump. That's unbelievable. And, again, their own internal polls showing that. New York turning red would be stunning. That's why liberals yesterday pulled out all the stops to sort of demonize all of the people that went to this rally, that attended the rally. How many of you watching right now went to the rally in New York? Let me know in the comments below. And a lot of the liberal media started comparing the people that went to this rally as Nazis, as to the similar people that showed up in 1939 at the 20,000 person strong Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden in New York City, just ahead of our start into World War II. This was MSNBC last night. It's kind of a stunning moment from MSNBC. Watch.
But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling Because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally. A rally where speakers voiced anti-Semitic rhetoric from a stage draped with Nazi banners. When a Jewish protester rushed the stage, the Associated Press reported, quote, instantly, a dozen or more stormtroopers set upon him, knocking him down and beating him as he held his head in his arms. Most of his clothing was torn from his body. Later, he was booked for disorderly conduct. Now, against that backdrop of history, Donald Trump, the man who has threatened to use the military against opponents he calls enemies from within, who has threatened to use the troops to quell what he says are lawless cities, and to use those troops to carry out mass deportations of immigrants, is once again turning Madison Square Garden into a staging ground for extremism.
Can you imagine?
Well, yes, I can, because that was Rachel Maddow's entire most recent book is about anyone who was non-interventionist during World War II was a Nazi supporter. So what may have been those people showing up to say we don't want our kids to fight overseas, we don't want to get involved in world wars, you don't know what those people were there for in 1939. Rachel Maddow does, because I guess she can read minds and, you know, psychically talk to all those people who are dead now. But that's their main platform, is that anyone who's anti-war is a Nazi.
It's unbelievable. I know the MSNBC guy conveniently left out the history part of this, that there were about 100,000 people outside of that Nazi rally in 1939 protesting against the Nazis. So you had Jews outside in the streets in Washington, D.C. protesting against the anti-Semitic rhetoric that the Nazis were throwing out inside of Madison Square Garden. It was the largest, German sympathetic party in the United States that was holding this rally. No mention of the 100,000 people and the Jews in the streets that were protesting this. And also no mention about it last night with the number of Jews that were inside watching Trump speak last night. No mention of that whatsoever. It was kind of a remarkable moment. And then you had AOC going on camera last night also saying this total BS. Listen.
This was a hate rally. Mm-hmm. This was not just a presidential rally. This was also not just a campaign rally. I think it's very important for people to understand that these are mini January 6 rallies. These are mini Stop the Steal rallies. These are rallies to prime an electorate into rejecting the results of an election if it doesn't go the way that they want.
Right. So
I wouldn't say there was anything mini about it. I can't sell out Madison
mini
Square Garden.
January 6th.
She couldn't either.
Oh my God.
Does that
there's
mean
no way
all the musicians and sports teams and stuff that have performed there are by proxy Nazis as well?
Yeah, I mean, great point, because I was going to say they could have drawn any comparison they wanted to. They could have said, 16 years ago when the New York Rangers won the Stanley Cup, this was the scene of that backdrop, the epic win of the New York Rangers, or the New York Knicks, or, Concert of a Life, Billy Joel's,
last performance,
but no, they chose 1939, a Nazi rally, as the one that they were going to choose there. Unbelievable.
Subtle.
So that was AOC. To Eric Adams' defense, the mayor of New York City, he said when he was asked about this, was this a big Nazi rally? Was this a fascist rally by all these Trump supporters? Mayor Eric Adams kind of laughed it off. He said, absolutely not. I've been called these exact same things. It was anything but. Watch.
I have been had those terms hurled at me by some political leaders in the city, using terms like Hitler and fascist. My answer is no. I know what Hitler has done, and I know what a fascist regime looks like. I think, as I've called over and over again, that the level of conversation, I think we could all dial down the temperature. And I've heard people say that the former president should not be able to have a rally in Madison Square Garden. I strongly disagree. This is America. This is New York. And I think it's important that we allow individuals to exercise their right to get their message clear to New Yorkers.
Wow. So there, a lot of different walks of life, of course, were inside this arena yesterday, from Muslims supporting Trump to Jews supporting Trump to Black Americans to white Americans to Asian Americans to Latino Americans. And so they were, a lot of people who were at the rally were saying, I guess I am a Nazi. Watch this.
Hey, we heard that Nazis were supposed to be here. That's what Hillary Clinton said, so we out here to see. Have you seen a Nazi today?
We are the Nazi party. Yes.
No, I'm white though.
I'm the Nazi right here, yes.
Yeah.
Dominican Nazi.
Dominican Nazi. Latina Nazi. We got...
Oh, I'm the black Nazi. The biggest blackest Nazi you ever seen in your life.
I'm the Jewish Nazi. The Jewish Nazi. Hey, listen, I'm the cool Nazi.
I'm the white Nazi.
I'm Mr. Cool himself. We out here, baby.
He's the white Nazi.
Hey, he's the white Nazi.
He's really Nazi.
United here to make Donald J. Trump the 47th president of the United States.
Stop listening to the media.
Stop listening to the media. Yeah. That was great. It was amazing. Even just do a simple Google search for Trump rally. Go to Google. Not that I want to encourage anybody to use Google, but just if you go to Google and you just type Trump rally, all of the headlines are all from left-wing media publications, all of them saying the same thing about the racist rally and how this is a backlash for Trump and all of this stuff. And it's just unbelievable. Newsweek pushing out their narratives. It's crazy. So anyway, we got more news to get to here on your Monday.
We do. Coming up, we're going to talk to a former Justice Department lawyer who actually litigated voter fraud. It exists, but definitely not in the way that the media is telling you it exists. So we're going to hear about it from someone who actually knows, from his book called Injustice. I read it over the weekend. It's shocking. I think you should read it too, so that you know what you're talking about when you talk about voter fraud. So I'm excited to talk to him coming up. We're also going to talk about the war in Israel and how Israel knows that the war is a lost cause. So why are we doing this? But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at American Financing, because today's economic environment is really stressful, obviously, but with the Fed finally starting to drop interest rates, there's no better time than now to put you and your family in a better financial position. So if you're a homeowner, American Financing is helping thousands of families just like you who've been struggling and maybe even putting your expenses on a high interest credit card. You can get out from underneath that debt by tapping into your home equity. And in fact, this is something that wealthy people do all the time, as they leverage their assets. This is just one way to do that. And $800 a month is how much American families are saving by doing just that. That's like a $10,000 per year raise at work. And it costs absolutely nothing to just learn this. Find out how much you can save. You can close in as little as 10 days and maybe even get out of your next month or two of mortgage payments because you have a new debt structure. There's no better time than now to turn your situation around. So call them at 866-890-8434 or go to americanfinancing.net/redacted. One more time, that's americanfinancing.net/redacted. Is there voter fraud in the United States? Well, of course there is. It'd be almost impossible for there not to be. But my next guest was a Justice Department lawyer who worked in the voter fraud division, and he litigated voter fraud under both Bush and Obama's Department of Justice until he couldn't. His book, Injustice, tells the story about how the Obama administration used the Department of Justice to litigate voter fraud when it worked for the Democrats and then leave it alone when it did not. Now, I read this book over the weekend. I'm more convinced than ever that the media does not know what they're talking about when they're covering voter fraud. It happens. It is politicized. And guess what? There's a lucrative industry to deny voter fraud. And in 2011, our next guest warned that who funds this denial industry? George Soros, the globalist. J. Christian Anderson joins us to discuss, and it's my pleasure to meet you, sir.
Hi, how are you?
So did I get anything wrong there? Is that an apt summary of your book, that voter fraud is politicized and it happens and we are not told about it properly?
Yeah, I mean, look, I remember right after Obama won that Attorney General Holder came down to the office, and then the political appointees came down to the voting section and basically told us, we're not going to enforce certain parts of federal law that require voter rolls to be clean. And they just told us that straight up. That wasn't their priority. And, you know, I wrote about that in the book. And that became the reality. And there hasn't been a single federal DOJ lawsuit since that day in 2009 to do voter roll cleanup. We used to do that at the voting section, but not anymore.
Okay, so what you're talking about is Section 8 of the Voter Rights Act, which requires states to have clean voter registration logs. So now the media is saying that this is voter purging, acting like it's brand new. So can you explain how this is not brand new and how this is being politicized right now in the run-up to the 2024 election?
Yes, Section 8 of the National Voter Registration Act was passed in 1993. It was the top priority of Bill Clinton and the Democrat legislature. There's a amendment to the law that got it through a filibuster in the Senate that said you have to make a reasonable effort to maintain the rolls free of the dead and the people who don't live there anymore. Reasonable effort is the statute. And so the Bush Justice Department brought a bunch of cases against various states for having dirty voter rolls. And like I said, those cases are dead. So we have a situation now where the law enforcement officials in charge of our elections just don't care about dirty voter rolls. And that includes people like Jocelyn Benson in Michigan. The Public Interest Legal Foundation has been suing her for the last couple of years. We've been in court fighting her over dirty voter rolls in Michigan heading into this election. And she's fighting tooth and nail.
Can you define dirty? You mean it not just is non-citizens who have been self-identified, but also dead people, right? What else is dirty about a voter roll?
Michigan had 27,000 dead people on the active voter rolls. Some had been dead for 2 decades, and that's why we brought the federal lawsuit against the Michigan Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. So, it includes people who haven't been alive since the 90s.
Okay, now one of the things the Justice Department in its litigation against some states is saying is that you can't clean up your voter logs within 90 days of the election. Where does that come from? And why is the Justice Department forcing states to leave their rolls dirty, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, that's the federal freeze out. That's also in the law, where there cannot be systematic list maintenance. That's the term from the statute. Inside 90 days of any federal election. That even includes a primary. And so within 90 days of any federal election, states are only allowed under the law to remove dead people, people who have gone insane, which nobody does, people who have gone to prison in a state that disenfranchises you for that. Not all states do. Or to correct mistakes, or things that are not systematic. In other words, someone calls you on the phone and says, please take me off the rolls. So there's a federal law that doesn't allow you to do systematic list maintenance inside 90 days.
Okay, so then are these states outside of their rights to keep trying to do this? What Florida has said is we've been trying to do this and the Justice Department won't help us outside of their software. They just say, check the software.
Yeah, I think this revolves, Florida's fighting to get access to what's called the SAVE database, Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlement, SAVE. And under federal law, the federal government has to make it available to the states. Florida already sued the federal government. It was called, I think the case is called Florida versus Holder in 2012. And the court said you've got to give the access to the database. Now, how you give that access, whether it's really, nice and friendly and useful, or if it's begrudging, that's the issue going on right now with Florida. And the database itself lists all of the aliens that DHS has knowledge of.
Okay. So then should states have done this a long time ago? The media reports about voter purging. Is that legitimate? It's just too late to do it?
Yeah, I always, purging, by the way, is a language tested left-wing term.
Yes,
I call it list maintenance because that's what the statute calls it. But they love to call it purging because that's what happens after you eat bad fish, or what Stalin did to his generals. It was very violent. So they try to make you hate the idea. But yeah, list maintenance is what it is. And states are doing this on odd numbered years. This is an odd numbered year project more than an even numbered year project. They will do another large list maintenance batch in January in most places. So this is an issue that, is usually done in odd numbered years.
Okay. So then why is it being done now? Is it just political?
Yeah, I mean, that's you could squeeze this in first of all, if they're dead, you could do it right up to Election Day. So that's why it's being done now, because people are still dying. It hasn't gone out of style. And so people are dying and they can be removed from the voter rolls even under the federal law.
Okay. One of the things, though, you said that the Obama Justice Department did, which was enforce Section 7 of the Voter Rights Act, which allows voter registration at welfare and motor vehicle locations. You testified to Congress this year that actually this becomes a dragnet for illegal immigrants who don't even understand what they're doing. And so can you explain this? And do you think that the Biden Justice Department is also doing this, favoring Section 7 over Section 8 or other non-favorable Democratic policies?
Absolutely. Section 7 is basically the welfare agency registration, which you have to do under motor voter, DMV, social service agencies. This is the part they love, right? They love forcing states to, make a welfare office a voter registration office. And so that's great. That's what Congress passed. But if you're going to do that, you got to do what's the other part of Section 8, which is voter roll cleanup. It was meant to be a double whammy. Yeah, you register everybody, but you keep the rolls clean. And under the Democrat administrations, it's only worried about welfare agency registration and not keeping the rolls clean.
Right. And you mentioned not getting overseas military, their ballots as well, because the welfare state voters are going to favor Democrats, and the military voters will favor Republicans. So is that also still going on?
That's a great question. And what you're referring to is something called UOCAVA. UOCAVA is for military voters and overseas voters. And it's wildly popular. It passed the Senate, I think, 99-0. And so I think that the Justice Department was beat up enough in the early part of the last decade that they finally started making sure the military votes are getting counted.
Okay. So another thing that you talk about is that in a lot of these Black communities, they have what's called voter assistance. You found evidence of voters being walked into the polls and people overhearing these assistants saying, vote that one, vote that one, vote that one. Is this still happening? That's shocking.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, couple things to keep in mind. Not that I want to make this a law class, but there's a part of the Voting Rights Act called Section 208 that allows anybody to have an assister of choice to help them vote if they need help. And the only two people it can't be is their union representative or their employer. And so what you have all over the country are people imposing assistance. The key question is, did the voter get to pick the candidate or did the assister? That's the key question. Was there free will in the choice by the voter?
And so the Department of Justice is supposed to be rooting that out to make sure that there is no voter fraud. You write about how you tried to do that as a Department of Justice lawyer, and that sort of fell by the wayside under Democratic administrations. Is that correct?
Yeah. And so, look, I had a case in Mississippi where this was a central issue. Write about it a lot in the book, Injustice, where
the Ike Brown case.
The Ike Brown case, and people were being voted by assisters. A famous one, Patsy Roby, was one of the ones cited in court papers that was essentially going to people's houses and voting their ballots. And we put up evidence at trial. Anybody who says that voter fraud doesn't exist haven't read the opinion in U.S. v. Ike Brown or read anything about U.S. v. Ike Brown, because the whole case was about removing the choice of voters by assisters in many cases, where these notaries would fan out across the county and go into people's homes and actually vote their ballot. And we put up some of the victims at trial. So this is not some myth. There's actually trial testimony about it.
Now, one of the things I found so shocking, and I thought to myself, why have I not thought about this before is that there is a major industry of voter fraud denial. The media will tell you, like within hours of an election that there was no fraud. That's not possible. That's not how fraud rears its ugly head. So anytime the media says nothing to see here, usually there's something to see here. You mentioned George Soros, and I look back and I said, you said this in 2011. Oh my God. So who are the people beyond George Soros funding this fraud denial industry? And obvious question, why would they do that?
Well, since I wrote the book 13 years ago, there's a whole crop of new donors. Arabella, these venture funds like Arabella and others have cropped up to give huge amounts of money to left-wing organizations like the Brennan Center. They're reflexive. They're like circus trick animals. Like, is there any voter fraud? No, says squawks the bird. And so it's these folks who are reactionary. They never say there's voter fraud because they're not allowed to. It's contrary to their gospel. The truth is somewhere else. The truth is there is. How much? I don't know, because we can't ever research it, can we? We're shut down by groups like Project Vote and the Democracy, this or that organization. So it's real. I know the victims. I've been in their homes. It's a shame that they can't do something about it. They're reflexively defending it.
Right. So you started the Public Interest Legal Foundation, and you have your hands full now with fighting these types of things from the other side since you voluntarily left the Justice Department. Can you tell us a little bit about leaving the Justice Department and what your council does now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's funny. I left the department after I was subpoenaed by the United States Commission on Civil Rights to talk about the new Black Panther case that I worked on, and I was told I wasn't allowed to, but I did anyhow. I quit and I testified about it. But now the irony is that President Trump appointed me to the United States Commission on Civil Rights. So I'm a commissioner on the commission that started my departure from the DOJ. Public Interest Legal Foundation. What do? We're the nation's only C3 charity law firm that's dedicated exclusively to election integrity. And so, we bring cases all over the country to make election day, to have transparency, we're going to be filing a case this week about voter intimidation. Whatever it is to enforce the law the DOJ won't enforce, we will do it.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm so glad to talk to you for the first time. There's another bit in your book about the Justice Department suing companies through frivolous cases in order to transfer wealth to radical left-wing organizations. I'm going to leave that as a cliffhanger so people can read that for yourself, because I found that also shocking, especially the fact that you said it over a decade ago. So check out the book for yourself. It's called Injustice. And Mr. Adams, please come back on Redacted some other time. Thank you for this context. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Wow.
Yeah. So let us know what you think of that.
That's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
And I like his point. He says, that for anybody who says it doesn't exist, then they haven't done their reading. They haven't studied the case law. They haven't seen the on the record testimony in a court of law that confirms that it is real.
Yes.
Get your head out of your ass. If you know anybody, any liberal folks out there who get in arguments with you on Facebook or whatever, just link them to this book and tell them, I understand you're ignorant. Read this book, and hopefully you'll come away more educated about it.
Yeah, and especially, he takes the piss out of Eric Holder and Loretta King for ignoring the civil rights of white people because they had a radical agenda as soon as they got into the Department of Justice. Something that I posted about just last week after reading this book was the 2008 election in Kingston, North Carolina, where voters overwhelmingly voted to hold nonpartisan elections, meaning they didn't want to see Republican or Democrat next to their candidates any longer. A 67% black population voted for this, and the Obama administration would not let them because they said black people wouldn't know how to vote otherwise without the partisan cues.
So Loretta King is basically like, hey, you're too stupid.
Yeah.
to know the difference. So if we remove the R or we remove the D next to the candidate, you're too stupid to figure it out.
That's literally what she argued. I linked to this on my X page. You can see it for yourself because I learned it from this book. Black people voted for what they wanted, and the Department of Justice said, you don't know what you want, actually. We're going to not let you have that. We're not going to approve that change. Even though you wanted it, even though black people voted for it, they're like, sorry, you don't know what's best for you. We do. That's what the Democratic Party thinks of these, of black voters. And you can see it over and over again, case after case in this book. And
so you see a lot of outrage right now on Twitter, and folks who were voting Democrat for many, many years, voting Republican now, voting for Trump this time around, saying we have for years been walked on and stepped on by the Democrats who've lied to us, who do not have our best interests at heart. Yeah. And this is a perfect example of that. All right, we've got more news to get to here. You're not going to believe the CIA deep state swamp rat who has just been uncovered and who is responsible for these new concentration camps that are set to be built inside of Gaza. Yeah, this guy should be locked up, by the way, in his sort of treasonous actions against the United States. And yet here he is, former CIA guy, involved in this. Wait till we talk about this in just moments. But first, we all know the election 8 days away right now, and maybe you can feel a bit of anxiety and stress. I saw some people in the chat just a few minutes ago. They're like, please, can we just get this through? Can we get it over with? 8 days till the election day. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of people losing sleep over this. I know I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. It's absolutely crazy, and it's only getting worse right before it's going to get better. That's why we need a little bit of time to sit down, meditate, pray, just connect with source, whatever your source is. And that's why our friends over at Hallow will allow you to do that. Right now, no matter what happens, no matter how crazy things get, we can all keep our peace and grow closer to God or your source with the help of Hallow. You get 3 months free when you sign up at hallow.com/redacted. Hallow has over 10,000 plus audio guided prayers and meditations included. So if you don't know where to start, or you think you just want to sit quietly in the morning before the kids get up and just have a cup of coffee and then sit down and just do 10-15 minutes of prayer or meditation, it's a great time to do it. And they've got all of these audio prayers, guided meditations in there. Daily prayers such as the daily gospel reflections, daily miracle reflections, daily psalms, so many things to choose from. Prayers and meditations for mental health, to lower anxiety, overcome addiction, battle mental health issues, all of it. You get 3 months free. Just go try it. Hallow.com/redacted. You get these 3 months right now to help you through the election season right now for free. So just download it and use that code redacted. Hallow.com/redacted is the website. You can go and download it for free right now. Well, an update now to a bombshell story we brought you last week. Last week, Dan Cohen from Uncaptured Media revealed the plans to rebuild Gaza using concentration camps, yes, orchestrated by the CIA. These concentration camps would keep Palestinians in them under 24-hour surveillance using biometric scanners. Well, now we know who's actually behind this. Yes, the very same face behind the counterinsurgency strategy in Afghanistan and Iraq, the failed counterinsurgency strategy in Iraq and Afghanistan. And Dan Cohen from Uncaptured Media is back. Dan, it's been a very busy weekend. I mean, on the front part of this, you have Israel this weekend admitting that their war is essentially failing, that they have no compass. This isn't like some left-wing newspaper report. This is coming right from Israel itself. And now we have this bombshell new report that you've just uncovered about who's actually behind these concentration camps. Break it all down for us, if you would.
Yeah, Clayton. So the Israeli defense minister, Yoav Gallant, on Sunday admitted, he wrote in a letter to Benjamin Netanyahu and the security cabinet that the war is being conducted without a compass. So they really don't have any strategy. They don't know what they're doing. They're just going to occupy areas in Gaza. They, of course, kill a lot of civilians, but they don't actually defeat the armed resistance groups, namely Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the kind of junior partner here. So then they go on to the next one, and the Palestinian resistance continues to exist. And meanwhile, Israel's losing soldiers on nearly a daily basis. And over the last month, things have gotten much worse as it's gone into Lebanon and it's losing even more soldiers. So the whole image of Israel that it's going to be able to defeat these resistance forces is failing. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we saw Hezbollah manage to hit Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's house with a suicide drone. So things are not going well for the Israelis, and Gallant admitted as much here. So what they've done is now, he said in this letter, we need an alternative to Hamas rule in Gaza. So they want to basically have regime change by one way or another. They need a strategy to approve that, or to achieve that, rather. And so now the Biden administration, which, again, not really Biden, not really Kamala Harris, neither of whom have any idea what's going on. Biden obviously is senile, and I don't know what Kamala's excuse is, but I'm sure she's got one. Jake Sullivan is running the show in the Biden administration, this unelected bureaucrat, and he has approved a plan concocted by none other than the father, the face of the failed counterinsurgency doctrine strategy, the so-called surge in Iraq, David Petraeus, who not only did he fail there, but he also, when he was briefly the CIA director under Obama, he slept with his biographer and gave her classified information. So not a very upstanding character.
Now we're elevating David Petraeus once again. Like this guy, a deep state swamp rat who basically gave away classified information, basically treasonous against the United States government, is now back in the picture and involved in the rebuilding of Gaza. Like this, you can't make this up.
Yeah, actually, I want to show you this soundbite that I dug up from David Petraeus pitching this concentration camp plan just a few weeks ago.
I believe there should be a vision for the future of the Palestinian people that is similar to the vision that we presented to the people of Iraq before we conducted the major operations that we did there during the surge. And we would go to the people of Fallujah and we would tell them in advance of our operation, we are going to make your lives better. We're going to do it by getting Al-Qaeda out of your neighborhoods. And then we're going to stay in those neighborhoods. We're going to create gated communities, essentially. It's an accurate description, but with much more effective walls. In fact, we would tell them, I said, look, it costs a lot of money to be in a gated community in Florida, and we're going to give it to you for free here in Fallujah.
I mean, he's saying all of that, Dan, with a straight face. Like, this is comparable to like going to Boca Raton in Florida, where you could also probably go golfing. But we're going to do it even better because it's going to be biometrically scanned. We're going to monitor your movements 24/7. Like, it's hilarious that they're actually pitching this, and not even just pitching it, they're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, he actually, he kind of cracks a little smile. He thinks he's being funny, and you actually hear the laughs from the audience. So I don't know who's in the audience there at Rice University, but that's just total psychopath behavior to think of taking people who have survived an entire year of genocide, who have seen their families killed, taken away into torture, and worse things that happen that maybe we shouldn't mention on air in these prisons. And David Petraeus, from the comfort of the stage, is joking about rounding these people into these, what he call, gated communities, he likes to call them, where they will not be allowed to receive food or water unless they present a biometric ID that proves they are not affiliated in any way with Hamas. Not just they're a resistance fighter, but if you're a doctor or an engineer that was somehow affiliated with a government municipality or something like that, you're just a regular person, you will be forced to starve. That's what he's proposing. So that's just, it's just the epitome of evil. But what I found, and in my piece that I published at Uncaptured Media, is that David Petraeus actually is set to personally profit from this. He's a partner at a global investment firm called KKR, which is like a junior sort of BlackRock. And KKR owns Constellus, which is the current iteration of Blackwater, the notorious mercenary outfit that was famous and for committing, for example, the Nisour Square massacre in Iraq in the during the 2006 2007, I believe. And so, of course, it rebranded to Academy and is now Constellus, and David Petraeus' company, his firm, that's one of their assets. Now, Constellus is being contracted by this guy, Mordecai Moti Kahana, who's an Israeli-American businessman who's basically the conduit who's been pitching this to the Israeli Ministry of Defense and to people like the Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant. So he arranged meetings actually back in November of 2023, he arranged a meeting between an American general who he doesn't identify, who was in Iraq, but is pretty obviously Petraeus, and Gallant and other people from the Ministry of Defense to pitch this. At that point, probably they thought they were going to, cruise to victory in Gaza. But as things have gotten progressively worse, they haven't achieved any of their goals, and they've seen actually more captives turn out to be dead, or they've bombed them themselves. Now they're getting more and more desperate, admitting that they don't actually have any strategy, they don't have any way to win. And so the Ministry of Defense, Gallant, is like, look, we're getting soldiers killed on a daily basis. This isn't going well. We need some kind of way out. And so they are happy. The army chiefs are happy to have some kind of foreign CIA special force come in and run these concentration camps to take the load off the shoulders of the army. That's basically his pitch.
CIA coming into Gaza to build concentration camps, to monitor 24/7 Palestinians, the comings and goings of these people. I mean, I as an American citizen didn't sign up for this. And how are American tax dollars being signed off on by the Biden administration being funneled to this treasonous deep state swamp monster, David Petraeus, is mind-boggling and deeply troubling. He makes the comparison to Fallujah and Iraq, right? He's like, we're going to, protect you, and we're ridding Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is removed from this area, so we're going to come in and build these high-rise apartment buildings, gated communities, just like Florida. But of course, he's trying to compare that to Gaza. Well, it's totally different, because there's no elimination of Hamas. Hamas is there, arguably just as strong as they were on October 7th. So this idea that you're going to come in and now there's no fighters at all is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a totally broken strategy from the start. Even in Iraq, it totally failed because, counterinsurgency doctrine is based on this idea that a place is occupied by extremists that don't have any connection to the actual population, and that there's no legitimate complaint from the population. So it's, we're going to separate the civilians from the extremists. We'll take out the civilians and everything will be great. But as long as you're keeping these people in, concentration camps, or you're occupying and controlling their lives, they're going to resist. So it's just this total denial of reality. And that's why it has failed in virtually every instance it's been applied. I mean, in the U.S. experience post-World War II, they tried the same thing in Vietnam with the strategic Hamlet plan. That failed. We all know how the Vietnam War ended. In Iraq, in Afghanistan, they did this stuff and it failed every single time, and it guaranteed will fail in Gaza if they even get to try it. I'm skeptical they could even pull it off, because imagine, they take these trucks and take these big cement walls and try to start to erect them in the Gaza Strip. Well, the resistance that's operating in this massive tunnel complex is still very capable. It's not broken down. It's not even an insurgency. They're still operating as a national military where they have phone lines, closed phone lines throughout Gaza, where you have a commander who knows where in Gaza watching on cameras to tell the fighters how to carry out an operation. He's literally watching on cameras they've installed, preparing these operations and instructing them on exactly what to do, and watching the Israeli army movements. So when that tank or that APC or supply truck comes through, they're able to use an explosive that they've actually manufactured in Gaza. They're taking the Israeli weapons, the Israeli bombs that are duds, that don't explode, and they take those and basically reverse engineer them or turn them into their own improvised explosives. in order to carry out these operations. So as long as that's going on and the Israelis really have no answer for that, I think this whole concentration camp concept is pretty much a fantasy, and it's just the Americans, the U.S. government, the CIA is offering the Israelis a different poison than the one they're taking right now, which is just permanent occupation in Gaza with no actual strategy other than just the government wants to stay in power because they know the second that the government collapses, they go to elections, their heads are going to roll. People are going to want to know, why did October 7th actually happen? How did you let this happen? You failed to protect us. And now all these promises about we're going to win in Gaza and, we're going to win together. That's the big line in Israel. Those are a total farce. So they don't have any way to win. And, they're just taking this thing deeper and deeper into into just a descent that I don't think they're going to come out of.
Real quick, Dan, I'll get you out of here real quick on this. Israel has been really quiet on the number of IDF and Israeli soldiers that have been killed in these operations. I don't know that we have honest numbers, but from your reporting, do you happen to have a sense of how many Israeli IDF soldiers have been killed in these attacks inside of Lebanon when they've gone into these encampments? Do you have any idea? Because, Israeli moms and fathers, right, when they know that their children are being killed in these operations and they have no compass, as the Israeli Defense Ministry says, they have no compass to win this war. That's not going to, we know how it goes in Vietnam. We know how it went in Afghanistan. We know how it went in Iraq and the United States. And families are going to demand an answer to this. But anyway, do you have any numbers on this by any chance?
Well, the official numbers of how many Israeli soldiers have been killed since October 7th, and that includes October 7th itself, is 771 right now, which may or may not sound like a lot of soldiers, but when you consider that Israel is a small country, it's actually quite a lot. I mean, if you just compare the population of the United States, what are we, 350 million, where the Jewish Israeli population is 6 million. So if you compare those, I mean, that's many, 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 many times more than 50 times roughly as many soldiers. Imagine that many American soldiers dying in some war, how the American public would be looking at it. And then on top of that, you have more than 11,000 injured. So it's not just a matter of if they're dead or not. It's if they can't fight, if they're dead or injured, it doesn't matter. They cannot fight. So there's more than 11,000 of them. And then you have soldiers who are refusing to enlist, not because of some moral outrage, but because they're psychologically broken. They're defeated. They see we're just going back again and again to the same places that we said we conquered in November and December of 2023 or March or April of this year. And I saw my friends get killed there. Why would I go back there again? So it's getting worse and worse. The Israelis it's just stunning that they've admitted that they don't even have a strategy and they're continuing to escalate.
Unbelievable. You can read more of Dan's great reporting at Uncaptured Media. His new update on this David Petraeus piece of this concentration camp story is amazing. Dan, great work as always. Great to see you.
Thanks a lot, Clayton.
It's just so disgusting. I mean, what do you guys think about David Petraeus? Like, here he's back, ready to profit off of the lives of the imprisonment and concentration camp structure of Palestinians. Like, it seems like perfect.
A lot of people in chat were calling him David Betrayus.
Betrayus. I think that's what Trump calls him, right? I mean, betray us. Yeah, I mean, as a treasonous American, like how is this guy going to be able to profit off of this? And he'll be able to profit off of it through the money laundering scheme at the Pentagon, through the Biden administration funneling this money there. That's how this will all work. I hope, if Trump does get elected, regardless of what you feel about the guy, whether you like him or hate him, I hope he goes in there and just wipes the house clean, throws out all of these people. I sincerely hope that they do. I hope that they wipe out all of these people.
I did get kind of worried because on the Joe Rogan podcast, he praised Mike Pompeo, said he was a good guy. So I was
I don't get that. But he's also admitted like that was a mistake having this guy in there. I mean, Mike Pompeo, as our friend of the show, Tucker Carlson, likes to say, is a criminal. I hope Mike Pompeo is and maybe he's just being kind. Maybe he's just being kind. But when he gets in there, there's no way. I swear to God, I hope that CIA swamp monster Mike Pompeo is nowhere near this administration. Someone in our chat here, we just got a super chat. We'll get to your super chats here in a second. So any super chats you have or Rumble rants, come on in and take those. We'll get to those in just a second. But first, I don't know if you guys saw. Today, we now learned that the Treasury Department under Janet Yellen, the Biden administration, is set to borrow another $852 billion in Q1 of 2025. They're going to borrow an additional almost $1 trillion. Where are they going to get this money? I don't know if you see over my shoulder. Look at the frickin' thing. National debt right now, $35 trillion, almost at $36 trillion right now. It's unbelievable. Absolutely disastrous. By the way, Natalie had to step out to take care and pick up the children because the buses aren't running this week. So for whatever reason, anyway, so she's got to do that. So yeah, $36 trillion. We're almost in national debt, and we're going to borrow another $1 trillion in Q1. Thanks to the Janet Yellen Treasury Department. And by the way, did you see Janet Yellen was speaking? And we covered it in the newsletter this morning. She was speaking and she was asked by a reporter about the collapse of the U.S. dollar, basically. Like, how do you see the U.S. dollar's resiliency? Is the U.S. dollar going to survive? How's the U.S. dollar looking? And as she was speaking, she started to answer that question. The Treasury Department logo that was on the front of her podium fell off and collapsed and rolled across the floor. Like, it's unbelievable. Anyway. That's why you're seeing the dollar in deep, deep decline and in deep, deep trouble. We're going to borrow another $1 trillion in January in Q1 of this year. Unbelievable. Where are we going to get that money? Are we going to borrow it somehow? Are we going to continue to borrow it from China? Are we going to borrow it from Japan? They're going to buy more treasuries from us, and we're going to further sink the Japanese economy and the German economy. Where are we going to get this money? Who's going to lend us this money right now? Would you think you're going to get paid back by lending all of this money? It's absolutely ridiculous. So that's why we're such big proponents of investing in precious metals, making sure that you see gold prices right now surging to all-time highs, silver almost nearing all-time highs right now for the price of silver. We are big proponents of investing in precious metals, and our friends at Lear Capital can help you do that. They can help you get set up and start investing in gold and silver today, converting some of your U.S. dollars, which are declining quickly, into gold and silver, even if it's just a portion of it to protect your family. Yes, it's great that these prices are surging. Yes, it's great that Bank of America predicts gold is going to go over $3,000 an ounce. UBS says $3,200 an ounce. It's about $2,700 an ounce right now. Great. That's great that it's going to go up. Great. But for me, it's wealth preservation. It's like making sure that my dollars are not in U.S. dollars. They're actual in a tangible asset like gold and silver or real estate. So I'm such a big proponent of investing in real estate, real tangible assets that go up in value, not down, and are a wealth preservation tool. So our friends at Lear Capital can help you get it set up right now, and actually just get on the phone with them and call them. They will help you. You can have gold or silver sent right to your house. You can store it in your gun safe. You can also have it stored off-site in an off-site facility, totally under your protection, under protection for you, under 24-hour armed guard. You can call them 1-800-613-3557 to get their free silver guide right now. Sky High Silver is coming. The silver market is on the verge of something big. Go grab that report if you want. It's a really fascinating report about silver because it's used in about every electronics device that we have. And of course, it's also, it's a commodity and a currency. Or go to learredacted.com. No obligation to purchase, by the way. Just talk to them and see what they have to say. All right, let's take some of your super chats today on this Monday. Throw them up on the screen if you'd be so kind, David.
Yep, we'll do the Rumble rants first since we can't put those on the screen. From Camby Dread over on Rumble, you guys need to have Jeremy McKenzie from reigningdissident.com on your show. He's a Canadian veteran the government here keeps trying to throw in jail and has thrown in jail. Okay. We'll look into that. Jeremy McKenzie, I would love to speak with him as well. Thank you. Thank you for that recommendation. G. Fontes 119, the Democrats had to clear them out to get a good look at the rolls and then use that access to use them to cheat on a massive scale when tens of thousands of co-conspirators involved every election. Yeah. You're talking about the voter rolls. Fascinating. Yeah. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Okay, now we're on to YouTube, and I'm going to put them on the screen for you. Okay.
Lawman Land, thank you for your super chat. Says, my manuscript, First World Before the Flood, on YouTube community, chapter 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. All right, thank you, Lawman Land. Appreciate that. Thank you for your $4.99 super chat. It's Mr. J. Appreciate that as well. And oh joy, from GNPD, yeah. Oh joy, like they're all about the joy right now, isn't it? The Democrats. $1,000. Thank you. I hope Trudeau will use that service as well. The maid service. What if Trudeau's like, you know what? I've had enough of my administration. I've had enough of politics. I started something called the maid program, and I'm going to take advantage of it. I'm going to show you all how good and how it actually works. I mean, so many Canadians would be applauding that. Welder X, thank you. Harris voters are pro Mark of the Beast. Thank you for that super chat. I love the little Star Wars guy. Look at this little, what kind of dog is that, do you think? Mews and spews.
It looks like a Chihuahua or maybe a rat terrier.
All right, let us know, Mews and spews, what kind of puppy that is. Did Merrick Garland go into hiding? Where is he now? It's a good question. He's probably still destroying the country, but just doing it behind closed doors. Anwar says, Trump met with Muslim leaders in Michigan and got their endorsement yesterday. Trump promised peace and an end to the war. Yeah, I saw that. And actually, Trump tweeted about that. And the Muslim leaders said, Trump promised us that he would end this war, that he would end the war in the Middle East. And we believe him. We believe that's what they said. We believe that he's the person to get us out of this war in the Middle East. I mean, do you think the Biden administration is? Do you think Harris is like a peace broker in the Middle East? No. I mean, look back to the Abraham Accords. I mean, and I think also if he can work with Putin to try to end whatever hostilities are happening in Ukraine as well and broker a peace deal there as well. I mean, I'm a glass half full kind of person. So these Muslim leaders are saying that that's the case. They hope that this will end that. So we'll see. Thank you, Anwar. Appreciate that. Why did the mustache man, meaning Hitler, kick the Rothschild cartel out of German banks? Did he see the same thing we are now seeing in America? Who really lost? The truth will set you free. Thank you for that, M. Appreciate that.
And that's all I got for Super Chats. Oh, just got another one. Hold on.
I just saw another one here.
Yep. There you go.
Alpha Ranch, thank you for your super chat. Go vote. Early voting already started. We voted today. Go vote today after this show. Yeah, how many of you voted right now? We've got 40,000 of you watching across all of our different platforms right now. Rumble, YouTube, X. I mean, 40,000 of you. How many of you voted? Let us know in the comments if you've already voted, if you're doing it in person, have you done early voting? I think the groundswell right now, the numbers are going to be astronomical. Jason the Doodler, thank you for your $5 super chat. Says, where is all the nonsense leading us? It appears we are on the cusp of a major revolution in the world. I think Americans are pretty level-headed. I mean, what do you guys think up there in Washington? You're up in Washington State, Philip, right? You're right across the border in Washington, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And so what do you see up there? Do you think that if Trump wins and you're kind of in a blue area, right? Are you in a blue area, more conservative area? What would you say, like the county where you are?
Well, I'm in Clark County, so it's. But I mean,
you're right where the ballots were on fire.
My opinion on it. Yeah, my opinion on it is really that just like most of the rhetoric is coming from the media and from the politicians themselves to make it seem like all hellfire is breaking loose everywhere. But like in my experience on the ground, people are pretty civil and decent to each other, and it just doesn't feel as doomed as you would be led to believe. But that's just that's my opinion. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, Democrats are going to say that it'll be an absolute disaster if Trump wins. People say they're going to move to other countries if Trump wins. I don't know, like on my street, there's plenty of Trump signs, and then there's a few Harris signs, and kids are still playing outside, and parents are still talking to parents. So I like to believe, I'm kind of a hopeful person, that it's not going to descend into chaos, but it's terrifying. the thing is, I think that's the thing. Like, we all as Americans, I think we're civil until you get these CIA deep state rabble-rousers that then instigate, like we saw on January 6th, how many feds were involved in instigating things and riling people up. We do it in other countries all the time. I mean, we have color revolutions in other countries all the time because it works. There's a reason the CIA does this in other countries. So will it work here? Will we fall for it? You see these MAGA supporters who notice that these white supremacists show up, and these MAGA supporters are like, get the hell out of here. We know you're feds. So there's an awareness, I think. We have a big, more of an awareness now about it, right?
Even on J6, you saw a lot of video of Trump supporters pulling people away from the windows. Hey, don't do that. Like, stopping them from doing violent things. It wasn't a majority of people that were doing those things. So, there's plenty of video to show that. They didn't like what they were doing.
Yeah. Gold and Prospector Milo, thank you for your super chat out of Canada. I think that's Canada, right? This will be a golden year for sure. Need to find new mines. Check out my page. All right. Yeah, I think gold, you're talking about gold. I think there's a lot of people believe it's going to melt up significantly as you see this inflation increase. You guys better be prepared. I'm telling you, it's going to be a disaster for the US dollar, and you're going to see gold prices surging, in my opinion. But that's not just my opinion. I mean, look, again, Bank of America is saying that in their gold report. UBS is also saying that we're going to hit $3,200 for an ounce of gold. I think it's going to go up significantly as the U.S. dollar goes into further decline and trouble. So it's coming. It's just a matter. Now, you want to protect yourself or not. It's up to you. You can sort of wait till the bottom falls out and then it's a disaster, or you can start to really make plans right now to protect you and your family. That's my personal opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. But what's the worst that can happen if you protect yourself, right? Like, you can think, oh, that's just fear mongering. The U.S. dollar is going to be fine. $36
who's going to be walking around going, who's going to be walking around going, damn it, I have a bunch of gold.
Right. Man, I bought a bunch of silver and it's gone up in value. And I have a bunch of gold now where I used to have U.S. dollars. And I own a bunch of real estate now that's going up in value. You know what I mean? So what's the worst that can happen? You're buying tangible assets instead of fake U.S. dollars, which are backed by nothing. It's backed by debt and the strength of the U.S. military. So again, what's the worst that can happen, right? You just have a little bit of gold, like to Philip's point. So anyway, again, you do you. It's totally up to how you take care of your family. It's like why some people think that, oh, that's crazy to buy food to prep for your family, to have ready to cook meals in case there's a blackout, in case we lose all electricity power for a couple of weeks. You're a crazy person you're a prepper. What are you, a prepper? I love how Democrats use that now as a negative. Oh, you're prepping, you're taking care of your family and you're prepping in case something happens. Yeah, big middle finger to you. Yes, I am prepping. I am taking care of my family in case something like this happens. And just look at what happened in Texas with the electricity grid,
Like I say, aren't they all into organic farming and, taking it back to the farmer? I mean, isn't that technically be categorized the same kind of prepping? You're basically preparing to take yourself away from the system, living off grid.
Yeah. Is it that
There's
bad?
nothing wrong with it. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that to prepare, to make sure your family's protected. No. It's the same way people have guns in their homes, to protect themselves against the unexpected, if you will. AD
even
Straw
Kamala
Hat.
Harris.
Right.
Did you see that on Oprah? She's like, somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot. She said that on Oprah.
Oh my God. She doesn't even know what kind of gun she owns. AD Straw Hat says Scamala hasn't done anything. Remember on the 6th of January? Hasn't done anything. Yeah. Any more super chats?
We got two more Rumble rants. We got IM1GR. Tucker Carlson for Trump White House press secretary. I think we'd vote for that.
Can you imagine?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
I would love that. Tracy Kling. I'm in Southern California, voted yesterday and was pleased when they asked for ID.
Oh, wow. Imagine that. California. Oh, Aspen.
Right,
California.
Another super chat there on the screen for you.
Refusum says, voted for Jill Stein. We need candidates not backed by APEC or corporate lobbyists. Hey, good for you. I agree with you. The problem is, again, with third-party candidates, I come back to, Theodore Roosevelt, my favorite U.S. president. By the way, if you ever want to read anything about Theodore Roosevelt, I encourage you to read the trilogy of books by Edmund Morris. The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. I think the second one was called Theodore Rex, and the third one is like Colonel Roosevelt. The three books, they're fantastic. I think the first one won a Pulitzer Prize. But anyway, of course, he left office. He was there for 2 terms. He ascended to the presidency after McKinley was shot. So he was there in almost 8 years, 7.5 years in the presidency. And then he runs as a third-party candidate. After taking 4 years off, he runs on the Bull Moose ticket as a third-party candidate. And he loses. One of the greatest American presidents in history runs on a third-party candidate ticket and can't win. That just goes to show you how broken the system is. And I think Trump was right on Rogan the other night when he talked about the two-party system. Sadly, even if you do win the presidency as an independent, like if you were Ross Perot, probably are closest to winning the presidency on a third-party ticket, right? Until he kind of had to drop out. But he was up. He was beating Clinton. He was beating George H.W. Bush. But if he would have won, what party would he have worked with in Congress to get anything done? And I think that's what Trump's point was the other night. Sadly, that's what we're stuck with right now. Until we can remove this money from the politics process, instead of having 2-year presidential races, maybe we could get it down to a few months like they do in the UK and other places. I don't know. It's deeply troubling. Karen from New Hampshire says, can we get these folks saying they will leave the country under Trump to put it in writing? They always say that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many of these people said it before and then they didn't do it, right? Like Robert De Niro and these other people. And anyway, kill your Igoris says, I voted for Perot. How many of you guys voted for Perot back in the day? Interesting. Temperance says, cash is trash. And thank you for your RSD 100. Appreciate that super chat as well with is that Pumbaa? Pumbaa from The Lion King? My favorite hyperbole couple.
You say Pumbaa.
M. Lowe says, my favorite hyperbole couple. Thank you so much. It's like I asked Colonel McGregor that the other day. I said, am I being hyperbolic when we talk about the world is descending into World War III? And I said, no, you're not being hyperbolic at all, because we're beyond the point where, the Cuban Missile Crisis level, you have the United States, 57,000 troops being dragged into a massive war in the Middle East. What is Russia going to do? It's going to back Iran. China would back Iran as well. The United States would back Israel. What would the Arab countries do? Where would Egypt be? I mean, you're talking about a world war. I mean, that's a world war as it is. And it's already being played out. They don't want, of course, the Biden administration doesn't want to tell you that it's happening because it would hurt them. But it's happening. Suicidal, I'm not going to, it says, I voted for Perot, but I knew he wouldn't win. Crypto Economist says, I voted for Ross Perot in the first election. I was able to vote in. I was able to do vote in, write in. Suzanne says, your makeup is way too dark today. I don't wear makeup. Thank you, Suzanne. This is just because I walk the dog every day and I live in a very sunny place. So I'm constantly walking my little mini pincher, and I tan very easily. So no, I don't wear any makeup. Maybe I should. Back when I worked at Fox and Friends on the Fox News Channel 10 years ago, is it 10 years? No, 2017 is when I retired from there. But, it'd be like, 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning when I get there. We go on the air at like 6 a.m. And because we had the high definition cameras and all the lights and stuff, and everyone at Fox, all the makeup artists would come out and put makeup on, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And right after the show, they had a big thing. They had baby wipes all throughout. So you just go up and grab one of those wipes and just get that crap off your face. I hated it. But if you didn't put it on, you look like me right now, which is pretty terrible, I guess. Is that it?
Yep, that's it.
Oh, M. Perez says, hey, Clayton Morris, then why didn't you talk about Tony Hinchcliffe calling Puerto Rico floating island of garbage at the Trump rally? Because I could have covered he's a comedian, and I could have covered because that's what the left-wing media did, by the way. They focused on that one comedian who spoke way before Trump even made it to the stage. And the left-wing media covered that story to the hilt. We covered it actually today in our newsletter. We covered it first thing in the morning in our newsletter. I don't think the joke was particularly funny at all. I mean, he just called Puerto Rico an island of garbage. He said there's a huge garbage island floating out there. It's called Puerto Rico. And no one laughed.
That's his shtick, though. Like he writes for Comedy Central. He's the guy that writes all the roast jokes on the roast, the Comedy Central roast. Like, he's just the king of roasts. And so that's like his shtick. He has the #1 live podcast in the country for roasting people. That's what he does.
Oh, okay. So. I never heard of him before, to be honest with you, but I live under a rock sometimes.
I watch him.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't funny. I didn't laugh. I didn't find the joke particularly funny. But I mean, Puerto Rico does have a garbage problem. So, there's that. But why didn't I talk about it? Because we could have talked about every other speaker. I could have spent 20 minutes just talking. Okay, Hulk Hogan said this. Then J.D. Vance said this. Then Tucker Carlson said this. Comedian Jay, what's his name, said this. There was 6 hours of speeches.
Dr. Phil said this.
Dr. Phil said that. There were 6 hours of speeches. I'm not going to be like the left-wing media and just pull out one bad joke about Puerto Rico. And then the left-wing media made the entire event about that one joke. If you do a Google search for Trump rally, just do a Google search for Trump rally, all of the comments is like Trump rally backlash over racist comments. It's like, really? So that's what you took away from the 60,000 people that were there? Really? In blue New York, Manhattan? That one joke by this comedian? Even the Trump administration later, or the Trump campaign later, said that they didn't think it was funny, and they didn't endorse that type of comedy, I guess. I don't know exact words were, but anyway, are you happy I talked about it? But I think there were some larger pieces at play with that Trump rally that I wanted to talk about. Watch his show and you'll understand his humor. Okay, I'll check it out. I haven't watched it. Chuckles shirt says Clayton is square. He doesn't watch Kill Tony. No, I actually used to do stand-up comedy back in the day, and I love stand-up comedy. Norm Macdonald, probably my favorite comedian of all time. So I love off-color comedy too. Like I like Don Rickles. I mean, I like all sorts of off-color comedy. If it's funny and you can make people laugh about it, and we can all make fun of our skin colors and our stereotypes and all of that stuff, I'm fine. I'll laugh at it all day long. I'm not a square. Anything else? Is that it?
Wonder what they'd have been saying if he said it about the poop map in San Francisco,
Yeah, there is a giant poop map. Whole streets are covered in it in San Francisco. All right, guys, thank you. That's going to wrap it up. We do have a daily newsletter. I mentioned the newsletter off the top. I hope you will subscribe to it. It's totally free. We publish it kind of first thing in the morning when you guys wake up. It's delivered to your inbox. Just go to redacted.inc. Natalie writes it. I edit it. We add it's just the two of us who work on it in the morning. And we try to cover stories you might have missed while you were sleeping, stories that are developing in the morning. So just go to redacted.inc, put in your email address. You'll receive a welcome email from me, which is just clayton@redacted.inc. And you have to approve it. You have to click on, I think there's a link that is in there that says you have to approve it so it doesn't go to your junk folder. And then tomorrow on Tuesday, you'll receive the newsletter in your inbox. Now, Gmail labels our newsletter as dangerous. No joke. It'll label it as dangerous and give you a warning because we tell the truth in our newsletter. So they will warn you. Gmail does. So just give them the middle finger and click on it that you want it in your inbox. Anyway, redacted.inc. It's not .com, it's redacted.inc. So go there and support the show if you would. Thank you guys for subscribing to our little show here. We appreciate it. We work really hard to bring you a great newscast every day covering the stories the mainstream media ignores or puts on a whole big pile of propaganda on top of, and we try to sort through it all here and have a great conversation in the process. So thank you guys for watching. We'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great night, everyone.